My name is Hillary Parker, and I'm 35 years old. When my husband slapped me at our 10th anniversary dinner in front of 50 guests, my parents saw the bruise forming on my cheek and walked away. He raised his wine glass with a smirk. Well-trained family you've got. But 30 minutes later, when the restaurant door opened again, it wasn't my parents returning. It was my CEO, 3 lawyers, and divorce papers I'd signed 6 months earlier. That night, David Mitchell went from controlling everything to kneeling on the marble floor, begging for mercy he'd never shown me. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. This is the story of how I spent 2 years planning the perfect exit, and why sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's massive success. For 10 years, David controlled everything: the bank accounts, the credit cards, even my professional wardrobe budget. You should be grateful, he'd remind me daily. Not many men would support a struggling lawyer like I do. Struggling lawyer. That's what he told everyone. At dinner parties, he'd laugh about his little wife playing lawyer, while his tech startup soared. Our friends would nod sympathetically, like I was a child with a hobby. Even my own sister once said, "You're so lucky David lets you work." Let me work. The truth? I was bringing in 3 times his salary, had been for 3 years. Senior associate at Brennan, Chen and Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. But I kept my maiden name at work, deposited my bonuses into a separate account he didn't know existed, and let him believe his $200,000 was carrying us. Why? Because the first time I mentioned a promotion, he threw a wine glass at the wall. "Don't embarrass me," he'd said, voice deadly calm as burgundy stained our white kitchen. "Men leave women who emasculate them. Is that what you want? To be 40 and alone?" I learned to make myself small, learned to say, "David's the breadwinner." So often I almost believed it. Learned to hide the Hermes bags clients gifted me, to downplay every victory, to pretend my late nights were just filing paperwork. But 6 months ago, everything changed. Margaret Chen, the CEO of our firm, a woman who built an empire from nothing, called me into her office. "Hillary," she said, studying me over her glasses, "how long are you going to let that man dim your light?" I didn't have an answer, but she did. My parents saw everything and chose to see nothing. The first bruise appeared 3 years into our marriage. Mom noticed it at Sunday dinner. A purple bloom on my upper arm where David had grabbed me for laughing too loud at my brother's joke. She pulled me aside in the kitchen, and for one moment, I thought she'd say something. "Honey," she whispered, "you need to learn not to provoke him." Not to provoke him. When I showed up to Christmas with a split lip, David's response to me getting a bonus he didn't know about, Dad took David aside. My heart soared. Finally, someone would defend me. But I heard them laughing minutes later, Dad clapping David's shoulder. "Women, right? They don't understand the pressure we're under." My younger sister Sarah was worse. "At least you have someone," she'd say, scrolling through dating apps. "Do you know how hard it is out there? David's successful, handsome, wants kids. Stop being so dramatic." At company events, David would introduce me as his better half who keeps the home fires burning, while I stood there with 2 law degrees and a case win rate that made partners jealous. My own family would beam with pride. Their daughter had married well. The last straw came 6 months ago at my nephew's birthday party. David backhanded me in the garage for contradicting him about mortgage rates. My mother walked in, saw my face, saw his hand still raised, and quietly closed the door. That night, I made a decision. If my family wouldn't protect me, I'd protect myself. But I wouldn't do it with anger or scenes or pleading. I'd do it with something far more powerful: patience, planning, and the kind of success that couldn't be ignored. If I left David the normal way, I'd lose everything. The prenup he made me sign was airtight. His lawyer buddy made sure of that. Assets divided based on financial contribution to the marriage. Since everything was in his name, since my salary went into accounts he controlled, I'd walk away with nothing. The house? His name on the deed. even though my grandmother's inheritance paid the down payment. The cars? His. Even our daughter Sophie's college fund was technically his investment portfolio. You'll get standard visitation, my first lawyer had said, reviewing the documents. But custody? Unlikely. He's established as the primary provider. Courts favor stability. Stability. David, who'd thrown Sophie's birthday cake against the wall because she'd asked if Mommy could read the bedtime story instead of him. David, who told our 8-year-old that Mommy's job isn't important like Daddy's. But there was one clause buried in page 47 of that prenup. One his drunk lawyer friend had probably copied from a template without reading. In cases of documented domestic violence witnessed by multiple parties in a public setting, all agreements become void. Public setting. Multiple witnesses. Documented. David thought he was smart, keeping his violence private, behind closed doors, where bruises could be explained away and no one would testify. The financial stakes went beyond the prenup. David's company had contracts with my firm. If I left messily, he'd pull them, nearly $10 million in annual billing. He'd already threatened as much. You leave me, I'll make sure you never make partner. One call to Margaret Chen about how unstable you are and you're done. He didn't know Margaret and I had been having very different conversations, but I needed more than her support. I needed proof. Public, undeniable proof. And I needed David to provide it himself. David thought he held all the cards. He was wrong about two things. First, those unstable accusations he threatened. I'd been documenting everything for 2 years. Every bruise photographed and sent to a medical app that timestamp verified injuries. Every threatening voicemail backed up to 3 different clouds. Every incident logged in a journal my therapist, yes, the one I saw secretly, would validate in court. But documentation wasn't enough. Family court judges had seen it all before. Private violence was he said, she said, even with evidence. Second, David didn't know about the fraud. 3 months ago, while looking for my passport in his office, I found something else. Invoices. Dozens of them, billing clients for services never rendered. He'd been skimming from his own company, hiding it from his board. Nearly $2 million funneled into offshore accounts. I photographed everything, sent it to my private email, then put it all back exactly as I'd found it. You seem happier lately, David said that night at dinner, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Hard. A warning squeeze. Not thinking of doing anything stupid, are you? Of course not, I smiled, not flinching as his grip tightened. I know my place. Margaret Chen knew everything. She'd helped me find the right divorce lawyer, someone David's connections couldn't touch. She'd also made me an offer. Become my partner, Hillary. But first, clean up your personal situation. I don't promote victims. I promote survivors who've taken control. The partnership papers were already drawn up, the announcement ready. All we needed was the right moment. When the time comes, Margaret had said, make sure it's public. Make sure there are witnesses he can't intimidate. And make sure he shows everyone exactly who he really is. The anniversary dinner was in 3 days. If you've ever been underestimated or had your family turn their backs when you needed them most, you'll understand what comes next. This isn't about revenge. It's about strategic planning and perfect timing. Before we continue, please hit that subscribe button if you believe in standing up for yourself. And comment below. Have you ever had to hide your success to keep the peace? Let's build a community of strong individuals who know their worth. Now let me tell you about the dinner that changed everything. The Michelin-starred restaurant gleamed with crystal and expectation. 50 guests, all David's choices, his board members, his investors, his college friends who still called me David's girl after 10 years of marriage. He'd placed me at the far end of the table, 7 seats away from him, the spouse corner, where wives smiled and said nothing. Sophie was with my mother. David insisted no children at his celebration. To 10 years, David raised his champagne, not looking at me. And to my patient wife, who knows her role. Everyone laughed. That kind of nervous laughter that meant they knew something was off, but wouldn't dare acknowledge it. I excused myself during the appetizers, needing air. In the hallway leading to the restroom, I ran into James Morrison, senior partner at a competing firm, Margaret's old colleague. "Hillary, I heard congratulations are in order," he said warmly. "Margaret's been singing your praises. That Henderson acquisition was brilliant." "Thank you," I smiled, genuinely happy to see a friendly face. "How's the Richmond case going?" We talked for maybe 3 minutes. Professional courtesy, nothing more. But when I turned to head back, David stood in the doorway, his face dark. The entire restaurant could see us. He grabbed my wrist, yanking me toward the dining room. "Flirting with Morrison?" his voice carried. "At our anniversary dinner?" "David, we were just what? Humiliating me?" 50 faces turned our way. The restaurant's ambient music seemed to stop. Even the waiters froze. "I was being polite," I said quietly. "He's a colleague." "Colleague?" David's laugh was ugly. "You're nothing, a nobody playing dress-up in suits I paid for." That's when I saw my parents at their table. Mom's eyes met mine, then looked away. David's grip on my wrist tightened as he dragged me back to the table. Every eye in that restaurant followed us. The sound of my heels clicking on marble seemed amplified in the silence. "Sit," he commanded, pushing me into my chair. I straightened my napkin, picked up my water glass with a steady hand. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" His voice rose. "You disappear to throw yourself at another man." "I was having a professional conversation." "Don't lie to me!" The slap came fast, hard. The crack of his palm against my cheek echoed off the vaulted ceiling like a gunshot. 50 guests gasped in unison. A waiter dropped a tray. The sommelier stood frozen, bottle mid-pour. My face turned with the force of it. I felt the heat bloom across my cheek, knew the mark would be vivid against my pale skin. But I didn't cry, didn't cower. I'd been hit before, but never like this. Never with an audience. Never with proof. I touched my cheek gently, then looked directly at David's board members, at his investors, at the society wives who lunched with judges, at my parents. "Did everyone see that clearly?" I asked, my voice carrying across the silent restaurant. "Or should he do it again?" David's face went white, then red. He'd realized what he'd done, where he'd done it. You provoked me," he stammered. "I had a 3-minute conversation about a legal case." I stood slowly, with dignity. "You just assaulted me in front of 50 witnesses." The restaurant manager approached, phone in hand. "Ma'am, should I call the police?" I looked at my parents. Dad stared at his plate. Mom was crying silently, still not moving. "Not yet," I said, "but please document everything." The silence that followed was deafening. 50 of the city's most powerful people had just witnessed David Mitchell assault his wife. And now they watched as my parents, my own parents, stood from their table. Finally, I thought. Finally, they'll defend me. Mom walked over, Dad behind her. She looked at my face, at the red mark already darkening to purple. Her hand lifted, and for one moment I thought she'd touch my cheek, comfort me. Instead, she turned to David. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "She's always been difficult. We should go." My father nodded at David, actually nodded, like men acknowledging each other's burden. "You know how women get. Emotional." They walked past me, through me, out the door without looking back. David sank into his chair, relief flooding his face. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the burgundy liquid with satisfaction. "Well-trained family you've got," he announced to the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They know their place, know what matters." Some of his friends laughed nervously, others looked away, but they all stayed seated. All continued with dinner like nothing had happened. I stood there, cheek throbbing, watching David toast his victory. He thought he'd won, thought he'd humiliated me so completely that I'd never recover. My hand found my phone in my pocket. Under the table, hidden by the tablecloth, I typed one word to Margaret. Now. Sit down, David commanded, not even looking at me. You're embarrassing yourself. I remained standing. No. What did you say? I said, no, David. I'm done sitting. He started to rise, hand already forming a fist. You need another lesson? That's when we heard them. Heels. Multiple pairs. Clicking across marble in perfect synchronization, getting closer. The restaurant door opened. 6 months ago, Margaret Chen had changed everything with a single question. How long are you going to let that man dim your light? We were in her corner office, 40 floors up, the city sprawling beneath us. I'd just won the Henderson acquisition, a deal worth $30 million to the firm. But I'd told David I was working late on filing. I see you, Margaret continued, the real you, the brilliant lawyer who's been hiding behind that pathetic man's ego. Did you know the partners have been trying to promote you for 2 years? But you keep declining, saying you're not ready. I couldn't meet her eyes. It's complicated. No, it's not. She pulled out a business card. This is Diane Winters, best divorce attorney in the state. She handles my special cases. Margaret, I can't. The partnership is yours, Hillary. 7-figure base, equity stake, corner office. But I don't promote victims. I promote survivors who take control. She opened her desk drawer, pulled out a folder. I've also had lunch with James Morrison. He mentioned David's interesting accounting practices at his company, the kind the SEC would find fascinating. My breath caught. She knew about the fraud? I protect my investments, Margaret said simply. And you're going to be one of my best. But first, you need to be free. Completely, publicly free. The prenup has a domestic violence clause, public setting, multiple witnesses. She smiled, a shark smile. Your anniversary dinner is in 6 months. Very public, very elegant, full of witnesses David can't intimidate or buy. You want me to provoke him in public? No, I want you to be yourself in public. Let him show everyone who he really is, and when he does, I'll be ready. The plan was elegant, ruthless, perfect. For 2 years, I'd been building my case in silence. Every bruise photographed within an hour, uploaded to a medical documentation app that verified timestamps and couldn't be altered. 43 incidents, all cataloged, every threatening voicemail saved and transcribed. You ever try to leave me, I'll destroy you. No one will believe you. You're nothing without me. 72 recordings. Every financial document photographed. Not just the fraud, though that was damning enough, but proof of my real earnings. 3 years of deposits into an account David never knew existed. Proof that I'd been the primary earner all along. Dr. Patricia Reeves, my therapist, had been keeping meticulous notes. Hillary shows clear signs of sustained psychological abuse, her report read. Her husband exhibits classic coercive control patterns. But the masterstroke was the house. David thought it was in his name. He'd never actually read the deed, never noticed that my grandmother's trust had purchased it, with me as beneficiary. His name was on the mortgage, yes, but not the ownership. A detail his drunk lawyer friend had missed. The divorce papers had been drawn up 3 months ago. Diane Winters was brilliant. She'd found 17 violations of the prenup. David didn't even know he'd committed. Using marital assets for his offshore accounts, hiding community property, tax fraud that made our marriage itself fraudulent. When do I serve him? I'd asked. You don't, Diane had smiled. Let him serve himself. One public act of violence properly documented, and every protection he thinks he has disappears. The partnership announcement was ready, the press release written. Margaret had even scheduled a photographer for the company event at the restaurant, my anniversary dinner. Everything waited on one thing, David being David, in front of everyone who mattered. The door was opening now. David stood up, emboldened by my parents' betrayal and the room's silence. "Look at you," he announced to the entire restaurant, "standing there like you matter. Like you're something special." His voice carried to every corner. "You know what you are? A charity case I've been supporting for 10 years. Several people shifted uncomfortably, but no one intervened. "Tell them," he continued, gesturing wildly. "Tell everyone here how much you make. Go on, tell them about your little job." I stayed silent, which enraged him more. "Nothing, she makes nothing," he was shouting now. "I pay for everything, the house, the cars, her clothes, her pathetic attempts at being a lawyer." "David," one of his board members said quietly, "perhaps we should—" "No!" David spun on him. "She needs to learn respect. They all do." He grabbed my arm, fingers digging into the same spot he'd bruised last week. "Apologize. Now. To everyone here for wasting their time with your dramatics." I looked around the room. His investors, his board, our supposed friends, all watching, all waiting to see if I'd break. "You want me to apologize?" I asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "On your knees," he said, "like you should be." Gasps rippled through the room. Even his supporters looked shocked. "David," his board chairman stood up, "that's enough. Sit down, Robert. This is between me and my wife." He turned back to me. "Well? Or do you need another reminder of who's in charge?" His hand rose again. That's when the door opened fully, and heels clicked across marble with the confidence of someone who owned the world. Margaret Chen had arrived, and she wasn't alone. The room froze in a different kind of silence, the kind that comes when true power enters a space. "David," I said, not taking my eyes off his raised hand, "you should look behind you. Don't try to distract Mr. Mitchell." Margaret Chen's voice cut through the air like a blade. David's hand dropped as he spun around. The color drained from his face. Everyone knew Margaret Chen, the woman who'd built a legal empire from nothing, who'd taken down senators and CEOs, who had judges on speed dial and whose firm handled half the city's corporate litigation. She stood in a pristine black suit, flanked by 3 people: Diane Winters, James Morrison, and a man with a camera who'd been documenting everything from the doorway. "Ms. Chen," David stammered, "this is a private event." "Actually, it's not." Margaret walked forward, heels clicking with precision. "This restaurant is a public accommodation. These 50 witnesses are members of the public, and that assault we just witnessed and documented, that's a crime." "You don't understand." David tried to recover his composure. "She provoked—" "I understand perfectly." Margaret pulled out her phone, showed the screen to the room. "I have a video of you striking your wife. Would anyone like to dispute what we all just saw?" Silence. David looked around desperately for support. His board members avoided his eyes. His investors were already stepping back. "Why are you here?" he demanded. Margaret smiled. It wasn't warm. "I'm here to celebrate. You see, I don't usually attend anniversary dinners, but I never miss a partner announcement." "Partner?" David's voice cracked. "Oh, didn't Hillary tell you?" Margaret turned to me. "Partner Parker, would you like to do the honors?" The room held its breath. Margaret's words hung in the air like an explosion waiting to detonate. "Partner Parker?" David repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Margaret said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hillary Parker, our newest equity partner at Brennan Chen and Associates, signed last week. The announcement goes public Monday." The room erupted in whispers. Everyone knew what that meant. 7 figures minimum, equity stake, a position that put me among the city's legal elite. "That's impossible," David sputtered. She makes nothing. I support—" "Actually," James Morrison stepped forward, "Hillary billed more hours than any senior associate for 3 consecutive years. Her Henderson acquisition alone netted the firm $30 million. David turned to me, his face cycling through confusion, rage, and fear. You've been lying to me? No, I said calmly. I've been surviving you. Margaret opened her briefcase. Mr. Mitchell, I believe you know Diane Winters, best divorce attorney in the state. She has some papers for you. Diane stepped forward, elegant and lethal. Mr. Mitchell, you've been served. The assault we just witnessed voids your prenuptial agreement entirely. What? Page 47, Diane quoted from memory. Domestic violence witnessed in a public setting nullifies all financial protections. You wrote it yourself, or rather, your intoxicated friend did. David grabbed the papers, scanning frantically. His hands shook. The house, he demanded. Was never yours, I said. Check the deed. My grandmother's trust owns it. You're just on the mortgage. My company will destroy your firm. Your company? Margaret laughed. The one being investigated for fraud? The one whose board is about to receive some interesting invoices? David went white. He looked at his board members who were already backing away, phones out, making calls. No, he whispered. Yes, I said. The look on David's face at that moment was priceless. But what happened next was even better. If you're invested in seeing how this plays out, make sure you've subscribed and hit the notification bell. Quick question. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you have waited 2 years like I did, or would you have acted sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Also, share this with anyone who needs to hear that patience and planning can overcome any bully. Now, for the moment of truth. Let me be very clear, Margaret addressed the room, her voice commanding absolute attention. Hillary Parker is not just a partner. She's our highest billing senior associate promoted to equity partner in the firm's history. Her base salary, which I'm happy to make public given the circumstances, is $2.3 million annually. Gasps echoed through the restaurant. That doesn't include her equity stake, Margaret continued, or her bonuses, which last year alone exceeded what Mr. Mitchell here claims to make in a year. David's legs seemed to give out. He grabbed the table for support. You're lying, he whispered. I pulled out my phone, showed him my account balance, the one he never knew existed. 3 years, David. I've been out earning you for 3 years. Every time you called me worthless, I was worth 3 times what you were. But you said... You acted like... I survived, I said simply. I knew if you knew the truth, you'd escalate. So I played the role you needed me to play, until I didn't need to anymore. His board chairman, Robert, stepped forward. David, is it true about the invoices, the fraud? David's silence was answer enough. We're calling an emergency board meeting, Robert announced. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation. You can't. We can and we are. Robert turned to me. Mrs. Mitchell, excuse me, Ms. Parker, we apologize for not intervening sooner. Your apology means nothing, I said flatly. You all watched him raise his hand to me. You all stayed silent. The shame on their faces was palpable. Margaret smiled. Gentlemen, I'd suggest you find new legal representation. Brennan, Chen, and Associates will be terminating our contract with your company, effective immediately. $10 million. Gone. Because they'd chosen silence. Diane Winters stepped forward with another document. There's more, Mr. Mitchell. David was already swaying on his feet, but he took the papers with trembling hands. What is this? Security footage, Diane said calmly. From your home, your office. Date-stamped documentation of 43 separate incidents of domestic violence over the past 2 years. You recorded in my house? That's illegal. Actually, it's not, I interjected. It's my house, remember? My grandmother's trust owns it. I can record whatever I want in my own home. Diane continued. There's also the matter of your offshore accounts. The FBI has been very interested in our documentation of $2 million in fraudulent billing. You went to the FBI? David's voice broke completely. 6 weeks ago, I confirmed. They've been building their case. They were just waiting for tonight. As if on cue, two men in dark suits entered the restaurant, FBI badges visible. Mr. Mitchell, we need you to come with us for questioning. David looked around wildly. His friends, his board, his investors, everyone had stepped back, creating a circle of isolation around him. Hillary, please! He dropped to his knees suddenly, grabbing at my dress. Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'll change. I'll get help. I stepped back, removing his hands from my dress. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. Think about Sophie, our daughter. I am thinking about her, I said. I'm thinking about how she'll never watch her father hit her mother again. How she'll grow up knowing that actions have consequences. You're destroying me. No, David. You destroyed yourself. I'm just refusing to hide it anymore. The FBI agent stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, please come with us. Before the FBI agents could reach him, Diane pulled out one final document. One more thing, Mr. Mitchell. The divorce papers you're holding? You'll notice they were signed and notarized 6 months ago. David's eyes widened as he flipped to the last page. This is dated. But how? Legal separation can be filed unilaterally in this state, Diane explained. We filed 6 months ago. We were just waiting for tonight to serve you publicly, with cause. The prenup protection you thought you had? Gone the moment you struck her, she continued. The house? Hers. The joint accounts? Frozen as of… She checked her watch. 7 minutes ago. Your access to Sophie? Supervised visitation only, pending family court review. You planned this, David whispered, looking at me with dawning horror. You planned everything. For 2 years, I confirmed. Every insult, every bruise, every threat, I documented it all. While you thought you were breaking me, I was building my case. Margaret added, the partnership announcement was scheduled for Monday, but given tonight's events, I think we'll expedite that. Tomorrow morning, every major legal publication will know that Hillary Parker is our newest partner. They'll also know why we're so proud to have her. David was on his knees looking up at me, the position he'd wanted me in just minutes ago. Please, he begged. I have nothing without you. You're right, I said. You have nothing. But that's not because of me. It's because you built nothing real. Your success was built on my silence, your company on fraud, your reputation on fear. The FBI agents moved in. Mr. Mitchell, we need to go. As they helped him to his feet, David looked back one more time. I loved you. No, I said. You loved controlling me. You never knew the difference. The FBI agents escorted David out in handcuffs. The entire restaurant watched in stunned silence as the man who'd dominated the room minutes ago was led away like a common criminal, which, as it turned out, he was. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret addressed the room. What you've witnessed tonight is what happens when domestic violence meets legal consequences. I trust you'll all be willing to provide statements to the police. It wasn't a question. The restaurant manager approached with 2 uniformed officers. Ms. Parker, we've documented everything. The security footage is already saved and backed up. Would you like to press charges? Yes, I said clearly. Assault, battery, criminal threatening, all of it. One officer began taking statements while the other approached me. Ma'am, we'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to file the full report. But given the number of witnesses and video evidence, he'll be held without bail pending arraignment. My phone buzzed. 3 of David's biggest clients had already sent termination notices to his company email. Word traveled fast in our circles. Robert, David's board chairman, approached hesitantly. Ms. Parker, I need you to know, we're conducting a full audit tomorrow. Any funds that were inappropriately taken will be returned. The FBI gave us a preliminary report and it's worse than we thought. That's between you and the authorities now, I said dismissively. He nodded and retreated. Around the room, David's supporters were making quiet exits, their shame palpable. His investors were on phones with lawyers. His friends wouldn't meet my eyes. "Hillary," Margaret said softly, "you did beautifully. How do you feel?" I touched my bruised cheek, felt the sting that would fade in days, but the freedom? That would last forever. "I feel like myself again." I stood in the center of that elegant restaurant, 50 witnesses around me, and felt something I hadn't experienced in a decade. Power. Not power over others, but power over my own life. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder. "Partner Parker, would you like to say something to the room?" I looked around at the faces, some ashamed, some shocked, some quietly supportive. My parents' empty chairs seemed to echo with their absence. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and clear. "For 10 years you all watched. You saw the signs, the careful makeup covering bruises, the way I flinched when he moved too fast, the excuses I made, and you chose comfort over conscience." Several people looked away. "I don't need your apologies now. What I need is for you to remember this moment the next time you see someone struggling in silence, the next time you witness abuse and think it's not my business, because your silence makes you complicit." I picked up David's abandoned champagne glass, still full. "But tonight isn't about you or your guilt. It's about new beginnings." I raised the glass. "To Hillary Parker, equity partner. To Sophie Parker, who will grow up seeing her mother's strength, not her father's fists. And to every woman in this room who's been told to make herself smaller to make a man feel bigger." A few women raised their glasses, then more. Soon, even the men were toasting, though their discomfort was obvious. "One more thing," I added. "My grandmother used to say, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. David showed you all who he was tonight. But more importantly, I showed you who I am. Believe that too." Margaret started clapping. Slowly, others joined. Not everyone, but enough. Within a week, David's empire crumbled completely. The FBI investigation revealed more than just $2 million in fraud. It was closer to 5. His board voted unanimously to remove him, then discovered he'd been using company funds for his offshore accounts. The civil lawsuits started immediately. His company's valuation dropped 60% overnight. 3 major investors pulled out. 7 clients terminated contracts. By Friday, bankruptcy lawyers were circling like vultures. "He's been denied bail," Diane informed me over coffee. "The judge considered him a flight risk, given the offshore accounts. Trial's set for March." "What's he facing?" "Federal fraud charges, 15 to 20 years. State assault charges, 2 to 5. Plus the civil suits from his investors." She smiled. "He'll be lucky to have bus fare when this is over." The social consequences were equally swift. The country club revoked his membership. His name was removed from 3 charity boards. The business journal that had featured him as Entrepreneur of the Year ran a new story. "The Fall of David Mitchell, a case study in fraud and domestic violence." But the most satisfying consequence came from an unexpected source. "Ms. Parker?" A young woman approached me at the courthouse. "I'm Jennifer Walsh. I was David's assistant for 2 years." I recognized her, the girl who always looked terrified when David was around. "He did it to me, too," she said quietly. "The verbal abuse, the threats. I have recordings, emails. I want to testify." By the end of the week, 4 more women had come forward. Former employees, a junior investor he'd propositioned, a bartender he'd grabbed at a company party. David Mitchell wasn't just a fraud and an abuser. He was a serial predator whose power had finally run out. My parents showed up at my office 3 days after the dinner. "Hillary, sweetheart," Mom started, tears already flowing. "We had no idea it was that bad." "You saw him hit me," I said, not looking up from my files. "You walked away." We thought if we didn't make a scene it would calm down," Dad said. "We were trying to help." "No." I finally looked at them. "You were trying to avoid embarrassment. There's a difference." That's not fair. Fair? I stood up. Was it fair when Mom told me not to provoke him? When Dad laughed with him about emotional women? When you both chose his comfort over my safety? They sat in silence, aging before my eyes. We failed you, Mom whispered. We failed our daughter. Yes, you did. Can you forgive us? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Someday. Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean trusting you again. What can we do? Therapy, both of you. Individual and couples. Learn why you chose an abuser over your daughter. Then maybe we can talk about rebuilding. They agreed immediately, desperately. My sister Sarah was different. She came to my new apartment, mine alone for the first time in a decade, with wine and apologies. I was jealous, she admitted. You had the husband, the house, what looked like the perfect life. I didn't want to see the cracks because it meant my goals were wrong too. And now? Now I see that being alone is better than being with someone who dims your light. She raised her glass. To my badass sister who took down David Mitchell. We drank to that. To truth over comfort. To strength over silence. 6 months later, partner Parker was unstoppable. I won 3 major cases in rapid succession, including a landmark discrimination suit that set new precedents. My client base tripled. The American Bar Association invited me to speak at their annual conference about strategic legal planning in domestic violence cases. Forbes ran a feature. From Victim to Victory: How Hillary Parker Became Law's Newest Powerhouse. The article detailed not just my professional success, but the calculated way I dismantled my abuser's life while building my own empire. You're an inspiration, Margaret said, reviewing my quarterly numbers. Billing is up 300%. You've brought in 7 new Fortune 500 clients. But the real success was Sophie. My 8-year-old daughter had transformed. Without David's constant criticism and control, she blossomed. Her grades improved. She joined the debate team. She stood taller. Mom, she said one evening, working on homework at our kitchen table, a kitchen without fear. I'm proud of you. For what, sweetheart? For being strong. For showing me that bullies don't win if you're smart about fighting back. I hugged her tight. Remember, Sophie, real strength isn't about fighting. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. Like Dad tried to do? Yes, like Dad tried to do. She was in therapy, processing everything with a specialist in childhood trauma. But kids are resilient when they're supported. When they see justice happen. The Hillary Parker Foundation launched that fall, providing legal services to domestic violence survivors who couldn't afford representation. The first case we took? A woman whose husband was a prominent surgeon. Within 3 months, she was free, safe, and rebuilding, just like I had. I don't regret waiting 2 years. Patience was my weapon, planning my strategy. Every day I stayed, I gathered more evidence. Every insult he hurled, I documented. Every threat he made, I recorded. If I'd left earlier, emotional and unprepared, he would have destroyed me. The prenup would have held. The custody battle would have favored him. The fraud would have stayed hidden. But by waiting, by planning, by building my power while he thought I was powerless, I won everything. The new boundaries I set weren't just with David. They were with everyone. I no longer hide my success to make others comfortable. When I walk into a room, I own my achievements. My name is on the door now. Parker, Chen, and Associates. Yes, Margaret made me name partner within a year. I don't accept keeping the peace as an excuse for enabling abuse. When I see it happening, I speak up. I hand out my card. I offer resources. I teach Sophie that independence is non-negotiable. She has her own savings account. She knows that love should never require diminishing yourself. She understands that anyone who needs you to be less so they can feel like more isn't worth having in your life. My home is a sanctuary now. No walking on eggshells, no flinching at footsteps, no makeup to cover bruises, just peace, success, and the knowledge that I saved myself. Never apologize for your strength, I tell every woman who walks into my foundation. Never make yourself smaller for someone else's comfort. And never, ever believe someone who tells you that you're nothing without them. Because the truth is, they're nothing without you. They feed on your light because they have none of their own. And once you realize that, you're already free. 1 year later, I stood in my corner office, looking out at the city skyline. CEO of my own firm now. I'd started Parker Legal with 3 other partners who'd left prestigious firms to build something different. Something that didn't just practice law, but changed lives. David was serving 12 years federal, 3 years state, sentences to run concurrently. His company had been dissolved, assets liquidated to pay victims. His reputation was a cautionary tale taught in business schools. The Mitchell collapse, when fraud meets consequence. He wrote me letters from prison sometimes. I never opened them. Diane handled all communication, forwarding only what was legally necessary. Sophie could decide for herself when she turned 18 if she wanted a relationship with him. For now, supervised video calls once a month were enough, and she often chose to skip them. My parents had completed 6 months of therapy. We had dinner once a month now, cautious, boundaried, but healing. They'd finally understood that their silence had been complicity, their traditionalism a cage that nearly killed me. "I'm proud of who you've become," my father said at our last dinner, "who you've always been, but we refused to see." It was progress. Sarah had started volunteering at my foundation, using her social media skills to raise awareness. "You saved my life too," she told me. "I was dating someone just like David. Seeing your story made me leave before it got worse." But the best moment came last month. A young woman walked into my office, bruised, scared, clutching a business card I'd given her 6 months earlier at a charity gala where her husband had grabbed her arm too hard. "I'm ready," she said. We took her case pro bono. Within 3 weeks, she was safe, divorced, and rebuilding. Another light saved from being dimmed. This is my life now. Not hiding, not shrinking, not apologizing for my success or my strength. I own my story, my power, my worth, and I use it to help others find theirs. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's massive, undeniable success that makes your abuser irrelevant to your story. David thought he was the main character in my life. Turns out, he was just a chapter I had to get through to reach my real story. And that story? It's just beginning. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. Comment below. What boundaries do you wish you had set earlier? Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power. Check out my next video about recognizing early warning signs in relationships. And if you're in a situation like mine was, please know you deserve better, you are stronger than you think, and there is always a way out. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.